Hi, I'm Christian Williams, and I'm here today with Jeffrey Lewis, whose new novel is Land of Cockaigne, or something like that. We'll have him pronounce it for us. When I met Jeff Lewis, he was running one of the most popular shows on television, Hill Street Blues, with his longtime friend and partner, David Milch, for which he won many a writing award. And before that, and this bears on his book, he was an assistant prosecutor in New York City and also did defense work for some poor people after graduating from Harvard Law. And for the past 10 years or so, though, Jeff has led an entirely different existence, that of the hermit novelist. Jeff's new book is about an interesting couple, the Grays, who live in a beautiful town in the state of Maine, and who have an inclination, I think, to do the right thing. Always a good subject for a novel. And Jeff has an intimate connection with Maine. In fact, his last two novels, Bealport and Land of Cockaigne, are set in Maine. But I think before we go into Maine, Jeff, what the devil does Land of Cockaigne mean? Is this about drug addiction?
The land of Cockaigne was a medieval legend of a land of material excess. It was sort of a peasant's dream of what life would be like if it was good, as opposed to worrisome and work-laden and so on. There was an abundance of food, and wine fell out of the sky like rain.
Ah, yes.
And women were ubiquitous and all eager for men to have sex with them. I don't suppose you'd say it was a spiritual vision, but it was one that animated centuries of speculation, stories, and song. Among the most wonderful artistic representations was a painting by Bruegel of basically three drunks sprawled out under a tree, having partaken of the land of Cockaigne.
Well, from my reading of the book, in this small seaside town in Maine, that's a very provocative kind of background in which to think about the story, which involves bringing some what the newspaper called inner city youths to the land of Cockaigne paradise at the invitation of what I think must be considered liberal sensibilities. Now, how is it that you know anything about Maine?
Well, I may not know much, because at least according to the locals, but I know a few things from having spent a good chunk of the last, how many years, 30 years of it?
Yeah.
We're up to about 4 months out of the year, 4 or 5 months of the year in Maine. In a village, not unlike the village Sneed's Harbor and Land of Cockaigne, although also different from it in some respects. In particular, Sneed's is described as a village with only a smattering of summer colonists, whereas the village that I go to actually has quite a large summer colony.
I see. So a small town in Maine, so not as many mosques and synagogues as a place like, say, Castine.
I would say there's a shortage of synagogues and mosques in Sneed's Harbor, as well as in most other villages on the coast of Maine.
So we're sitting here in Los Angeles, which is a wonderful cocktail of races and opinions and ethnicities, which I think is why it's fun to live here. I imagine it's quite different for you to depart here on an airplane and wind up in a place like Castine each year.
Oh, I think that's the point.
That is the point,
Yeah.
right? But like all good stories, nothing in this book comes out the way you expect it to. And leaving aside what I consider your marvelously subtle uh, prose style, because there's lots of ways to tell these stories. It's not necessary to compare you to John Updike because comparisons are odious. In all of your books, including Vealport, which came out just last year, as a writer, you seem to have a deep affection, even for characters that are deeply flawed. Do your characters, the Greys in this case, or Walter and what's her name?
Charlie.
Charlie. Yes, her name is Charlie. Um, they try to do the right thing, but did they disappoint you?
As characters, no. Did they disappoint themselves? Not sure. Not sure. Uh, I think probably the way we all disappoint ourselves in substantial part in life.
Well, I'm looking forward to your reading. So only one more question. You know, the whole idea of progress in life, it's well known to be an Enlightenment idea, right out of Thomas Jefferson and our own revolution. And it has to do with trying to do the right thing through rational means, which seems to be a motivation of your main characters. So my question is, Jeff, is there progress?
Well, I think it's an open question, I mean, we can look at some things, and clearly there seems to be a progression from one thing to the next that seems to be better. On the other hand, we can look at a whole bunch of things in the world and think things are regressing, and whether the forces of progress or the forces of regression are closely in balance or one favoring the other. I think it's one of the challenges of life to try to determine. In the case of Walter, in this book, I don't think I'm giving away too much to say that he is kind of a sharp critic of people who think progress comes too easily. That could be a function of his rationality. It could also be a function of the concrete events shaping his life, particularly as they're presented in this book.
Fascinating, and thank you so much for doing this. And without further ado, some readings from Jeffrey Lewis's new book, new novel, Land of Cockaigne, just out by, I'd like to name the publisher, House Press in London, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Thanks again, Jeff.
Thank you.